Good morning and a happy Valentine's Day to everyone. I welcome you to today's live session. As we all tread through a pandemic for over a year with signs of positivity showing up a little bit here and there now, we welcome you all to an exciting panel discussion on literature in Asia post-pandemic. We have our best-selling author, Shruti Dora P. Mohar, as the moderator of the session today. She has written several books such as 23 Summers, The Last Gift, Where the Sky Feels Cold, and many more, selling hundreds of copies within months of their release. We're also joined today by our eminent panel members from Philippines. So we have Lia de Jesus, the author of Life and All Its In-Betweens, Nicole Navarro, the author of On My Way, Carmela Miriam Ebrio, the author of Life Uncounseled, and last but not the least, Anne Marla, the author of Hey Stranger and a yet-to-be-released book, After Midnight Voices. So I'm really excited for the discussion today, but to take it further, now I'm going to hand it over to Shruti Dora to continue.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this live event. I hope I'm perfectly audible.
Yes, you are.
Right. Yes, you are.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning to everyone in India. Good day to everybody east of us. Good evening to everyone, all of our friends there in the other Western Hemisphere. As Isvi said, I echo her at the beginning by wishing everybody a happy Chinese New Year, as well as, of course, St. Valentine's Day. And it is a matter of great pleasure that we've been able to organize this and come together. Four of our panelists, four eminent authors from the Philippines here today. And I'm not wasting any more time in welcoming them because we has just done that. So I'll kind of, initiate the discussion and then become quiet myself, because it's not a very good idea for the moderator to be talking for too long, and let our panelists speak. So I had a couple of thoughts in my mind when Okioto, our publisher, the common link among all of us, when Okioto was had conceived of this plan and had floated this idea to us, there are a few things which came to my mind. Let me begin by sharing these with you. I think the theme of the panel discussion today itself is indicative of a few things. Let me bring that before ourselves as well as our audience over here. Scope of literature in post-pandemic Asia. I think we begin by doing a couple of things. One is to acknowledge the fact that the pandemic, unprecedented that it has been to all of us in this generation, to our previous two generations, and to generations after us, something that no one alive now has ever seen at all. So in that context, I think this coupling that we have, that entire grief, that loss, that collective mourning that the world has gone through because of the pandemic, like some have been more affected, some have been less affected, but all of us have been scared. All of us have been, fighting for our lives, so to say. So the world is kind of just stepping out of it. And in that context, choosing Valentine's Day, which is meant to be a celebration of love, not just romantic love, but also love of all kinds, I think it makes it very significant that somewhere, we reiterate and we possibly give a message to that virus that, no matter what it has done to us, there is still a celebration of love, hope, joy for all of us. I think, that coupling makes sense. And speaking of grief, speaking of mourning, I was also thinking that although it doesn't sound commonsensical, but mourning, loss, pain, these can also be major instigators of art. Say, for example, I was thinking of, these are things that I read in any case, for my professional life as well. We have French literary theorist Roland Barthes and his very well-known work, Camera Lucida, for example, which is, apart from what it is as a theoretical work, the fact that it is born out of grief, the fact that it is born out of his mourning for his mother who had just passed away. It published in 1980, Camera Lucida is a book which is completely a reflection of that. So I think somewhere, although it is not very commonsensical, but grief and art also have a connection. And I think, today's panel discussion and that theme highlights that aspect in a very subtle way, that we get to discuss literature all over again in the context of the pandemic. So I think, that sets the mood for this. Now, I was just thinking if, we could begin by bringing this to the table, which I place before all our panelists, and we get to discussing this. If we take it for granted that Asia does indeed constitute a continent on its own, that it has some kind of a distinctiveness, some kind of a specific identity, then has the pandemic affected Asia in a specific way, in a particular way? Before I hand it over to our panelists, I would just like to point out that I thought they would have things to tell us specifically, because I would like the viewers to be aware of this, that we have 4 young authors over here. And when I say young, I'm not trying to be ageist. I'm just trying to point out the fact that despite being so junior in their physical age, they are very advanced, very mature in terms of their writings. And I've been going through their writings for a while. All of them have so much to write, so much to say about life, its meanings. 2 of their books, for example, begin with, they have titles which begin with life itself. Leah de Jesus, Leah over here, has a book, newly published book in December, Life and All Its In-Betweens. I'm sure she's going to present it at the right time. Miriam Ebreo, who is, apart from being an author, a lot of other things as well. She has a book called Life Uncounseled. That's been published in November 2020. And our other 2 panelists as well. So their entire thought process about life, their reflections on life, I think is something that they can bring to bear upon, this panel discussion. So I welcome them all to kind of, let's have a flexible format and not, kind of number our panelists and go about that way. Anyone who would like to begin can just, begin speaking. We have no rigidity about it. So anyone who is prepared to get this started. Would Miriam like to start?
I think we're just waiting on who laughs first. Right? Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Miriam Ebreo. My book is entitled Life Uncounseled, although this is not really a novel, but this is a DIY book. So actually, surprisingly, it's on the first page, is the last minute Valentine's Day gift. So it's perfect for today. And instead of reading the whole how to do it thing, here I prepared the box that is supposed to be within the book. So you can see it in the book on how to make this last minute Valentine's Day. And also, if your partner wants to have a bit of relaxation, this one is for the pamper time, and this is a date night stick jar, which is now up on the blog. So there. I won't be reading a part of the book, but it's now available on Amazon and Google Play. I think, should I pass the ball, or will Shruti be the one to point to the next speaker?
I think let our other panelists also in that case, introduce their books and maybe and get started. Then we can come back and talk again.
Yes.
So, yes. So I think Leah is prepared.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah De Jesus. I am the author of Life and All Its In-Betweens. So this book is actually a book full of free verse poems. And it basically, all the poems go under the category of what you experience in life, the emotions you go through, the events you go through. So yeah, seeing that it's Valentine's Day, I'm going to share a love poem It's called My Love the Moon. I'll look for it. Okay, there you go. So this is a short poem. So, My Love the Moon. If I get a child, I would teach them how to love the moon, as the moon loves her children, as the moon loves her guardians, the stars. If I get a child, I would teach them how to shine as the moon does, not as bright as the sun, but just as important, not as dim as the stars, but just as special. If I get a child, I would teach them how to be a selenophile, loving the moon with all their heart, loving the moon as I love her. If my child would ever have a rough day because the kids at school are being bullies, or because the teachers were too unforgiving, or because the sun was just beating down on them too much, I would tell them to wait until the night has come. I would tell them not to wish on a falling star, but rather the moon. Wish to the moon all your love and share it with her. For as she reflects the sun's rays, she will reflect your love's waves and project upon the world that is too cruel to go unnoticed the aura of your beautiful desires. If my child would think of themselves alone, I would tell them to wait until the night has come. I would tell them to once again look up at the moon, for someone out there is reflecting their love upon her. And when you feel the love radiating from her, my child, you will never feel alone. If my child were to be married one day, and she decides to have her love pronounced by the moon, I would tell her to go ahead and have her wedding at night. For the moon will walk her down the aisle with me. Her shine will be intoxicating, her glow astounding, as she was and always will be. If my child were to see me on my deathbed, I'd want her to know that she, the moon, is here with me, ready to make me a star, and that she would never fret. For the moon will always guide her as through the darkest of nights, as she always has for me. There. That's all. So that's My Love the Moon from Life and All Its In-Betweens. It's available in Amazon and Google Play. So yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed that.
That's beautiful, yeah. That's very, I mean, the moon always has this special thing about it. If you write about it, if you talk about it, it's always in a very special way. So I think Marla is ready to speak.
Am I? Yeah. Yeah, I don't have like physical copies of my book, but I will just quickly share them. I don't have them yet. So my first book is Hey Stranger. If you could see, it's a novella. It's a romance novella. And the second book is a poetry collection entitled After Midnight Voices. This is yet to be released, and both are published by Ukiyo-do, of course. I'm just gonna read like a poem from my upcoming book because I heard Shruti saying like how grief can actually power, writing. And yeah, that's how it is for me when I was writing poetry. So yeah, just a short poem. It is during late at night and I'm wide awake, 1/4 past midnight, and I hear those voices, those after midnight voices, keeping me up so late, saying one thing over and over, echoing inside my head. Your name. The voices keep calling your name, driving me insane. So yeah, that's it. It's just a short one. So yeah, that's it, very short one.
Right. Before we continue, I'd just like to add a couple of things to Marla's introductory part of her presentation. One is because I know that in India, we have a lot of young viewers to this program at present as well. Like a lot of my young friends are there watching this. So I would encourage them specifically, for those of you who are maybe looking for love, hoping for love, and by now you know that you don't quite get it in my books the way you want it. So I would, urge you specifically to take Marla's, to definitely look into Marla's first published novella, which is what she was showing us, Hey Stranger, published in December 2020. And I have read the book, and this is a short and sweet and tension-prone, but in the end, a happy resolution book between Samantha and, a romance between Samantha and Charles Richardson. These are the two characters. And I'm sure, Marla could do with some feedback, how inspired young people have felt, reading her romance novella. So that's one thing that I wanted to point out. I also wanted to say the way she presented before she read that brief excerpt out, that indeed, I mean, like I've been kind of going through all of your works. Marla's work I've found mostly online itself. So I've found things like, if I just quote her a little bit from here and there, she'll be able to exactly identify, of course, where these are from. Things like, she has written things like, I'm quoting her, I like being in pain, right? She's written things like, there is nothing more deafening than the silence between us. So there is, let's say, the other side of love as well, right? And I've taken down another one which says that how many times have you said it was nothing when your heart was actually breaking? I think, many heartbroken lovers would be able to identify with that immediately. So I thought, I would kind of add a little bit to what she had to say as an introduction. Of course, her other book, I think in a very timely way, is coming out right tomorrow on the 15th with Kyoto. This is a book which contains poetry about love called After Midnight Voices. So that's the forthcoming book. I encourage all of our viewers over here to definitely look up these books. Leah's book, Life and All Its In-Betweens, that she was showing up for us. Miriam, who of course has a very different kind of a book, right? She says, that these are quick craft projects which can inspire creative hearts. So I think that kind of adds a variety also to the kind of work that they do, and yes, right, to the kind of work that they do, and the authors that we have over here. So I think that's wonderful. We move to Nicole Narvato, whose book On My Way, I'm sure she's going to present it from there, published in December 2020, is about a lot of things. It's also about the overflow of her emotions, as she says, right, into writing. And I'll speak more about her after she herself speaks and introduces herself and the book. So over to you, Nicole. Please do speak first, then I'll come back again.
Hello, everyone. I am Nicole Narvato. So this is my book. It's titled On My Way. It's a collection of narratives of different stories of how I overcome some struggles. So I'm going to read something about broken heart. So it's Valentine's, but I'm going to read something about it. So the title is We Already Lost. Love, they say, is like going into war. It is hard to win it alone. You'll need your buddies to back you up and someone to fight it with to succeed. In love, you don't have to fight for it alone, nor fight one another, because when you choose to love and go into war with this person, you have to fight the battle together. But what will you do if suddenly you were left alone? Alone to fight the battle you both started and conquered before. How do you fight when you can't find the strength to do so? When you lost your will and when you don't have the reason for fighting? How do you wake up each day knowing that the person who was once your good morning has drifted away at the ends of tomorrows? How do you sleep at night when the memories keep playing and repeat no matter how hard you try to shut it down? How do you survive this life when the reason for your every breath has left you? The life you once imagined has become a daydream, and the love you once shared and thought would last has become a nightmare. How do you move on when you want to go back? Go back to the warmth of an embrace, and go back to the time you weren't apart. How do you save yourself from this misery? Why do we have to grieve for a loss? How do you tell yourself that it is okay, that it is for the best when all you have is pain, anger, longing, and love? Love, yes. Love for that person, for the same person who shattered your heart, for the same person who took away your happiness, for the same person who crushed your dreams, and for the same person who left you. Because no matter how hard, no matter how painful, and no matter how stupid you may seem, you will always want to go back. And it's always the same person, the same scenario, and the same love story. Because for you, even if it's not perfect, it is still your story and you're together. It's love, and the answer will always be love. That's it. That's the one chapter about heartbroken. You can find it on my book, On My Way. So you go and check maybe on Amazon, Google Play, and yukioto.com to find a copy. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you. I'll on that note, I'll just continue with what Nicole was saying, which was partly about, I think, it was a nice collection because she highlighted, pain at first, but then went on to, I think, that last sentence was very significant, that love as the answer, love remains as the answer. And well, it is the right thing to say on the 14th of February. I'll just refer to the fact that Nicole's writings, I guess, despite giving us all promises of love being the answer, is also largely about, I think, if I've understood your book correctly, Nicole, it's also about a lot of pain. It's also about, flaws and shortcomings, right? So if you wish, you can definitely talk more about it. But I, corresponding to that, I had taken down this particular short quote from your writing. I'm sure you will be able to recognize it in an instant. Let me just present it for our viewers over here. It is time, the dark side that made me me. I don't know if I was born to be miserable or to suffer, but I was a survivor. I think that also, fits the mood of what the world is now, what we started with. That's very much so. Will Nicole like to speak more about, about, let's say, pain and flaws and shortcomings and how you might have a hope of coming out of it? Do you want to kind of talk more about it? If you want, you can share your, personal reflections as well, because I mean, literature is very personal at one level. It does reach out, of course, to the world, but I do believe that it stems from each one of our existences. So if you want, you can talk about it.
Okay, actually, the first chapter of my book is where it says it all and where it all started. It's my book is a collection of different narratives of how a person can overcome the struggles. Because the problem with most of the peoples are like we are so affected with what is happening around us, what is happening with my life. Like we often ask ourselves about why is this happening to me? But in this book, it will show you like how you can overcome it. And then instead of asking why is it happening to me, maybe you could think about why is it happening for me, because we want to think that everything happens for a reason. So that's like how the book turns around, like how a person can overcome the struggles in life and how believing in yourself can unlock a lot of possibilities if only you finally believe in what you can do and yourself in the universe.
Definitely. I'll just move to Leah, who is, of course, a very, very young student. She is doing her major in theater arts. And all four of our panelists have been, one common characteristic about them is that they've all been reading and writing from a very young age, like all of them from school, so to say. For Leah, why I kind of connect you with this discussion that Nicole was having with us is that because Leah has also been an advocate of mental health, right? Like LGBT rights and mental health. So I'm sure, mental health is kind of, it has topped the list, the chart of, themes that have come up because of the pandemic and things which have a lot to do with literature, the kind of literature that we produce, right? Because, I mean, if we are to believe that the pandemic has caused us grief and mourning and loss only, then the only kind of literature that we go on to produce is going to be dark. So I think Leah is in a position to tell us a little more about this, kind of think and help us reflect on the nature of literature in these times.
Okay, so for me, it's just that mental health is really important, and we should really take care of it as much as people would take care of your physical health, because, well, it's still health, and in this pandemic, I'm sure that if not all, most of us, our mental health were affected because we're all stuck in the house. We can't go out. We can't do anything. And relating to Valentine's, we can't do the love languages that we usually do to share, to spread our love and stuff. And the pandemic really hurt us that way. But I want to just but say that even though that happened, it's not it's not that you should always say you should compare to yourself with other people, like, oh, but that person is doing so much more than I am, but we're in the same situation. No, that's not the case. Don't compare yourself, because how you are, it's all valid. Everything that you feel is valid. So try your best not to compare. And yes, during this pandemic, there are a lot of people who are affected. As I said, almost all of us are affected. And that doesn't mean that the way it affected them, it's the same for you. That's not the case. So you shouldn't I'm going back. You really shouldn't compare your feelings, everything that you're feeling, your emotions, the things that you are going through are really valid. So don't compare. As much as it's hard to not compare, but don't compare. And yeah, this pandemic is really hard, and I'm sure it will get maybe harder. Um, but um, but just remember that there are people out there for you, and you're not alone. So yeah, that's me.
I think that is a very important message. One of the things that the pandemic has done to us is to make us feel connected in an altogether new way. Like when we have been physically distanced, the more we've been cooped up at home, we have found out different ways in which we can connect to people like us. People who have similar problems, going through similar issues. I personally know a lot of people who have lost family members because of COVID. So how difficult it has been for them is, of course, not something that we can fathom. But the fact that they've been able to connect with possibly a larger number of people than they would have physically met, I think is what is one of the highlights, of this kind of phenomenal episode that the world is going through, has gone through. Speaking of connections, I think Miriam would also like to tell us something about, she is a member of Soroptimist International, right? So I'm sure she'd like to tell us something about it, which is to do with women's empowerment, right? And for our viewers over here, she is also, if you look up her Instagram account, she is also a lifestyle blogger, and she makes it a point to extend support to small businesses, right, crafts and all, which I think is reflected in her book as well. So would Miriam like to tell us a little more about women's empowerment, what this entire work is, and whether you think that the pandemic kind of boosts it in some way?
Yes, thank you, Shruti. Yeah, I think the pandemic really boosted women empowerment, not just women empowerment solely, but the community empowerment as a whole. Because as you said earlier, the struggles that we had brought us together. The darkness, the dark times, these has brought us together, and we were able to find connections with each other. Just as we began to connect right now. We all of us, we didn't know each other before Kyoto organized this forum, but we are here now. And I think one of the values or the qualities that the world had a connection to is empowerment, whether it be women or the LGBT community or the Black movement. But we all found connection, and we started to speak up for each other, for ourselves, and because of that, we were able to express who we are. And it's related to what Leah said earlier as to self-care. Um, because we were able to speak up, because we were able to say what should be done or what we need. as an individual and as a community, the COVID may have affected a lot of us negatively, physically as well, but it has brought the world together. And that's, I think, one thing that is really good about it. And even literature had experienced a positive impact or a positive side of COVID, because as we all know, literature influences a lot of works. And during the pandemic, a lot of us had time to write the book, finish a book, and now we're here. So I think that's one part.
Definitely. On that point of how probably artists have, it sounds very mean, but probably artists have benefited, quote unquote, benefited from the pandemic. I myself have. It sounds atrocious, and I'm very apologetic about the fact that when, you've got millions of people dying in the world, it's very, very sad that I have kind of benefited from the fact that there was no workplace, there was no everyday routine, giving us more time to write. But I think that's a very, very honest confession from our side as well. On that note, I think what I would kind of now bring to our discussion over here is the fact that I think all of us have come across this trend which the pandemic has set in of, how we revive and rejuvenate what our family ties are. I mean, like every newspaper column that you look into ever since the pandemic kind of stabilized a little has all been about how people found time for themselves, right? How they attended to themselves, how they gave time to their families, right? Very busy, super busy celebrities who've been kind of moving around all over the place. Like their interviews say that, for the first time, 6 months I was at home, I watched my son grow up, I, served omelette to my husband, etc., etc. So, given all that, there has been what can generally be called, in slightly academic terms, a resurgence of, what is generally known as Asian values, because all over the world, there seems to be a celebration of love, trust, family, hope, belongingness, etc. So what do our panelists say? I'll begin with Marla. Do we expect all of that to be reflected in the kind of literature that Asia sees now, or do we expect literature to have its own trajectory and not be particularly influenced by, by what the pandemic has done? You could just share your thoughts on this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like about the values, like I agree, because like personally I've experienced that. So like I said earlier, I also kind of live in India sometimes, so I don't see my family as often when I'm there, like, besides the video calls and stuff. And then I came back here in the Philippines, and then the pandemic started, and still I couldn't see my sisters because they lived somewhere else. But yeah, when they kind of loosened up the lockdowns, I was able to see them, and it kind of, because we're really a close kind of family. So seeing them again kind of made me realize, like, family values are really important. And I think like in literature, it's good that to incorporate that kind of way, especially during the pandemic. And I think since a lot of people experience the same kind of way, they might be able to write about it. It doesn't even have to be in like a book setting, but like blog about their feelings. At least sometimes I do that, showing like how important family or giving hope to some people. I think I have a friend who actually wrote a book which talks about hope, So it's, I think people can incorporate what happened in the pandemic in their writing, especially if that's their way of coping with it. So yeah, that's for me.
I think that's very pertinent. Exactly right. In order to cope with it, that's very true. Leah, would you, like maybe on that line of mental health that you were earlier talking to us about, would you like to kind of expand that?
Yeah. So for some people, how to deal with mental health, how to cope with your mental health, how to most people like me, I use the arts to help me cope with my mental health, and it does help. If you, I remember my, I had a writing class a year ago, I think, and my professor said to me to write about your experience. And in a way, for me, that stuck because that's how it's a very cathartic way of having to release of having to release your emotions, and it's a way to just write it all out if you can't talk about it, right? Most people would say if you're having a hard time, talk it out, but there are some people who can't talk it out. So what other people can do is go to the arts and just write it out, paint it out, and so on. And yeah, I think that's how people would cope. And going back actually to the question about how the how some of the Asian values are coming out to literature. Yes, I do believe that um it will affect our literature because I feel before this pandemic, all of us, if not most, sorry, if not all of us, most people have been chasing or running towards something that we're like our goals in life, and we're just running and running, and we're forgetting all these values that we learned as a kid. But then now the pandemic's here, I feel like people just stopped running, and all those values or all those things we learned finally caught up with us after all that running. And it's just going to settle in ourselves, and that's how literature can also go to. That's because it caught up with us, like the past caught up with us in a sense. Yeah, that's
Right.
all for me.
Very true. Thanks, Leah. Nicole, Asian values seem to be on the rise. Do you think so? You're free to differ.
Yeah, actually, I agree with it because,
Okay.
and yeah, I actually like to call 2020 as like the year of our reevaluation and reassessment of our lives because we were forced to slow down and appreciate the things that we have been, neglecting all along. I think we have been witnessing these changes among our community and ourselves as well. And surprisingly, we even find a purpose amidst the reading and writing literature makes us more empathetic because we finally learned how to the essence or the value of helping other people as well, you know. And I believe that literature actually helps us be more socially aware. That's why it really affected, and I think that increased the appearance of, the values that we have been neglecting all throughout the past years or all throughout our life even.
Very, very much, Nicole. I think that makes a lot of sense. Will our lifestyle blogger lady tell us something about how lifestyles might have changed? I'm sure they've changed because of the pandemic, because of the kind of Asian values which supposedly are on the top of our priorities now. Do you have any kind of an idea on how these things are happening? Any engagement with these things?
In as much as the pandemic affected lifestyle, I think a lot of people, since we are all most of us, apart from the frontliners, had to stay in our homes, we were able to redecorate. A lot of people went back to redecorating their homes to make them more comfy, more livable, and is a lot of the people turn to online shopping actually to purchase all the goods that they wanted to place inside their homes, and I think that's good. And if I may add to the Asian values part, I think one of the Asian value which really has been highlighted by the pandemic and the lockdowns is the resilience. Everyone had to be in their homes, had to be locked up in their homes. No one can go out. The groceries have to be bought at the nearest store possible. No travels allowed. And yet, we are all here. To we tried to overcome whatever obstacle was given us. And even in the Philippines, our lawmakers enacted the Bayanihan Act, which means that we have to have a sense of community. And I think the world really had a sense of community wherein every state tried to send help to other states as well. Um, Help such as food, clothing, the PPEs or the masks for our frontliners, and it's a really big thing. And I think we can find it, or we will surely find it in the literature after this pandemic. Just like how Bishu means the coronavirus, if you are familiar with the book, the Chinese book, wherein she discussed about patience and self-reflection during the SARS period. And I think that we will find it again, that sort of value or trend post-pandemic.
Right. Miriam, thanks a lot. That's a very pertinent addition to what we were discussing. I mean, that whole concept of resilience and how you hold yourself through tough times. I think, that sums up actually what the pandemic has brought to all those of us who are, now at present still alive to speak about it, of course. So that's a very significant thing. I think, I'm sure, as we will also be able to connect to this instantaneously, that this takes us back to the theme, so to say, of our panel discussion, because that's how we had begun. If indeed there is something called Asia at all, like as students, this is something that we used to be exposed to in our academic literature, that is there anything called Asia after all? I mean, like Europe seems to have an identity, America seems to have an identity, Africa definitely, but is there anything called Asia? But then I think, the way our panelists over here have looked at the question of, the pandemic, our existences and the kind of work that we've been doing, I think it definitely answers that in the positive, that there is indeed something called Asia. These are the Asian values, and this is how we've been, kind of moving around them, revolving around them. I think I'll introduce what can probably be our last major point for discussion, and then, let's see in which direction it goes. I have witnessed this in India, that very expectedly, a lot of projects have been cancelled because of the pandemic. Obviously, because, these have involved a lot of expenditure, businesses have incurred a lot of losses, like people have actually lost their livelihoods. The kind of human tragedy that the pandemic has been in this sense, I mean, even where the virus has not taken someone's life, it's always been, the effect of this. So there seems to be a kind of an economic crunch, right? A kind of a reluctance to push art forward, particularly because, very unfortunately, very sadly, to a lot of people in the world, art is so much of an extra, right? You do it only when everything else is done. So as authors, I'm sure, we put up with these comments, perhaps till now, maybe you haven't, but if you are there in the circuit for a longer period of time, then from non-authors, these are comments that we get a lot, that, okay, you're right, which means basically that you have a lot of time to waste. So, that's exactly that's how you entertain yourself. So to come back to our point, therefore, with some kind of a crunch, with, economies going into recession, with businesses and sponsors not too willing to invest in art anymore. Is that going to be a major threat to literature, to art, to aesthetics in the coming times? Do we have that kind of an apprehension? I personally do, because I've seen a lot of these, where we had these film festivals where content could have been looked into and purchased, etc. All of these have been cancelled. Now we just have these mini digital versions of it, where nobody is willing to look into, little known authors, less known authors anymore. So what is your experience, or what do you think about it? You could just go about, like freely, whoever wants to kind of start.
For me, may I? For me, I think there's this threat, but I don't think it will push through, because if you think about it, art or literature is, not to be corny, but tale as old as time. It's one of the constant things throughout history. Every world changing scenarios, stories have been told, art, statues, paintings, everything. It's still alive until now. So yes, there's going to be a threat. There is a threat, but I believe art will just push through, and it will stay standing, even after this whole pandemic, and for all the other most probably world-changing things might happen. Yeah. So yeah, that's
that's definitely an optimistic way of looking at it. That I mean, even if it's difficult, but Leah does believe, and I'm sure we agree with her, that art will nevertheless push through, which takes us back to Miriam's point of resilience. That's very much there. Yes, the others, please.
Yes, I also agree with Leah. I think art and literature is here to stay. And yeah, we may be being optimistic about it, but it's true. When people were in lockdowns, when people can't go out, we turn to our books, standing in the corner, standing in our shelves. We opened those books, and we started reading it. And most of us even finished the books. So I think it is here to stay. And the values that we discussed earlier, those will be the topics of the future books that we can read in the next, or probably next year, or this year, or in the next 5 years. And that, I think that is beautiful. And even our publishers began to transform or improve or cope with the situation. In fact, even during the lockdown, there were online book sales occurring everywhere. In the Philippines, we had the Book Development Association had this book fair to support our local publishers. They, aside from the online book fairs, they tried to cope by offering a lot of online publications, online versions of the book. Even Okioto had flipbacks now, or paper, what do you call it? The flipbacks, the one that you actually swipe just like a book, but it may be different. It may not be, it may not feel like the actual book, but that's the trend we're going right now. So literature is here to stay. We are just adapting it to the new norms, or as they say, the next normal.
Very, very true, very true. I think that is what we actually believe in and need to hear. Yes, Nicole or Marla, whoever.
Okay, I'm gonna go. Sorry. Okay, I think it's just a matter of like innovation and evolving, but it's not actually like diminishing. Because surprisingly, during the pandemic, the literature that has been produced and procured around the world has increased. Because like people are looking for ways to get rid of the chaotic news and all that is happening around us. So people turned into reading. And I think art and literature will always be there regardless of the circumstance. So it is art where which we learned about the past generations, and it also the future generation can learn about the present, you know. So because we literature even gave us a sense of comfort and expand in healing. So I don't think that it um, will be inexistent. It's just a matter of it's changing because the world is changing as well, you know. And I think by reading and writing, we understand the character. Like even if we're like reading fiction, we somehow like relate to the characters as if we were included in the plot. So this situation around us made us like feel down, but literature gave us this like a breath of fresh air. That's why instead of like it's affected, but it somehow increased during this time, you know, as what Miriam and Leah have said a while ago. So I observed how people loved reading, write more during these times, and because of that, um, and because of what's happening, I think we somehow feel I think we have problems when it comes to, you know, when bad things happen, it's become harder to be rational. That's why we need some literature to help us understand what is really happening around us.
Cool. That's, you know, like before I take Marla, which I'm sure is going to only confirm what I am saying now. Dear viewers, when I had begun this, after as we had introduced all of us, I had told you something about our four panelists here. I had said that, you know, they are young, but so as to ensure that I'm not making an undue reference to physical age, I was trying to tell you that they are wonderfully mature in terms of their reflections on life. I think even before we have heard Marla, I think the three of them have so well shown that, you know, like if I take their words, you know, Nicole talking about comfort, healing, that, you know, that comes from literature. Leah and Miriam pointing out as to how we all believe that literature is here to stay. I think that kind of a consensus on an optimistic assessment is what we need, number one. Number two, I think that's very true. That's something that's going to help us survive and move ahead. I'll just be listening to Marla. We all will be listening to Marla. Yes, Marla, please.
Yeah, no, I of course, I agree with everyone. And I think when you first mentioned that events were canceled during the start of the pandemic, I don't think like arts and literature is going to like cease to exist or anything. It probably went on a pause for a little bit, just like how the whole world did when the pandemic started. But now that we're kind of easing up in some places, arts and literature is already starting to go back to how it were. There were like online events. And I think like here in the Philippines, when cinemas were closed, one mall even started like a drive-in theater. So to accommodate cinema goers. So I think like what others said, arts and literature is not going to go away, but it will adapt to the changes that's happening around us. And yeah, I mean, if the whole world is already in like a not so good position, I think fiction could really help us escape that reality. I mean, who doesn't want to escape reality, right? And where to go to, but like in movies or in books, which, you know, write about that. So yeah, I agree with everyone, obviously.
Right, Mala, that's wonderful, because, you know, this is exactly what I think we had in mind. Yeah, Isvi, there is a small note which I think you were going to address. This is exactly, you know, what we had in mind, and I'm sure all of us on Instagram are, you know, very familiar with this. We have these funny little, you know, these memes and these posts which sometimes say that, you know, if I'm an author, for example, the whole world is burning. Everything is in chaos, and I'm the one who is saying, you know, here I've got a new book, you know, I feel this. So, but on a more serious note, I think as authors, as artists, we all agree exactly with what Marla had to say. She put it, you know, very well, that it's precisely, I think, when reality gets the better of us, when it becomes too much for us to handle, it is then the ideal thing for us to do is to escape into art. And it is not that art, as you know, that's how I had, started with Roland Barthes and Camera Lucida as his work. That it's not that art and literature have to be born out necessarily of happiness and love and comfort and joy and good times. It can definitely be born out of, it can be caused by what are apparent negatives as well. And I think we have come to this consensus that no matter how bad things have been, we have we have been pushing through with literature, and that's what we shall continue to do, which is a wonderful thing. I think I'll just give Izvi a chance to monitor the audience questions and see how that goes about. Yes, Izvi, please.
So we have an audience question for our panelists, and it says, is the situation any different in Philippines than the rest of the world as a whole? Or in other words, how is the mood now for those in the creative domain to look at the market?
Okay, so what is the situation like in the Philippines?
For the creatives. Would Leah like to answer this question?
So the question is, how different is the Philippines affected from the others, right?
Yeah, in the creative domain.
In the creative domain.
Yeah.
The thing for me is that I don't like comparing, because there are things that people are trying to compare, but it's not comparable, if I may. But if we were to discuss how the literature here in the Philippines is, I guess it's right now it's just more of, it's full of hope and at the same time sadness because of everything that's going around.
Okay. I think I'll just help Leah and everybody else over here. Perhaps they'll be able to answer this question better if you could just let us know, since everybody all over the world is watching, in terms of the pandemic itself, how bad was the condition of the Philippines. We could then move into probably what things are like in the creative domain. In terms of the toll, how bad was it?
I think every country has been affected differently, and we have different ways into coping with the scenario. But I think the Philippines has been affected. Well, the Asia as a whole has been affected differently because it is where technically the virus, COVID, has begun. But we have ways. Our government have ways into coping with the situation. And with regards to the creative side or the literature and arts, I think, as we have been mentioning a while ago, I think everyone, regardless of what country you're in, we are looking for ways to escape, because everyone is dealing with something. May it be like a loss because of COVID, like a loss of a job or whatever, But everyone wants to turn into something that will make them forget the problems that is happening, the COVID situation, the pandemic is already making us feeling, down and sad and all that. So we need something that can lift us up. And I think regardless of which country you're in, you could turn into literature and art for that. Maybe you could write about it, read something about it. And, it's always like different for every person's point of view and for every country, I think.
Right. The viewer who has this question, I don't know if I am the right person to answer this. I certainly am not, in terms of the fact that I have no idea of what exactly the thing is in the Philippines, but I'll still, try and kind of throw light on this. I have a feeling that perhaps the creative domain in the Philippines and maybe the rest of East Asia, Southeast Asia might not be too bad. I get a feeling for two reasons. One is directly related to this pandemic, because we've kept reading about it, that because of East Asia and Southeast Asia's exposure to such other virus related diseases in the near past, and what the rest of the world has been able to do, I think things have been a little more manageable that side. That's one feeling that I have. And the other thing that I've felt is something that our publisher Ukyoto will, I'm sure be able to corroborate, is that Ukyoto, for one thing we know, has been penetrating into Southeast Asia for a while now. For some months, like Ukyoto has been expanding there. I don't think that would have worked at all. We would not have found these 4 talented authors and artists from the Philippines and from other countries also, I'm sure, had there been a complete, let's say, negativity surrounding art and creativity in these regions. So I have a feeling, I also get a feeling because of what Ukyoto and I have been talking about the fact that there are physical bookstores opening up there, ready to take books from outside, Ukyoto's books from outside, from all over the world. So I think all of that is an indication that perhaps, so to get back to our Asian values, perhaps that's not altogether on the decline after all, at least in these parts of the world. It seems to be kind of okay. That is, I don't know if I, kind of twisted the question into this answer, but I hope I gave something to, the viewer who had this to ask. Ispi, I think there is another question.
Yes. So there's another question for the panelists.
I may add to,
yes, sure.
to Shru's answer and to answer the question from the audience. I think that the Philippines did not suffer any differently in terms of being affected by the pandemic. A lot of Filipinos, like in other states, a lot of us lost jobs. A lot of us had no more economic power or had really low economic power. But I think what happened was the creative market didn't really suffer. Instead, it really grew because more and more people turned into writing, turned into selling their art, turned into doing videos, creating videos for YouTube, for Twitch. A lot of people began selling their crafts. I mean, that's what happened during the pandemic. Even though a lot of people lost their jobs, they were pliable. We became pliable in such a way that we sought for other ways to earn money, to put food on the table.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, and speaking of evolving mediums of art, I think the next question connects to this as well. So the question is, how do you foresee the buying power of the readers from physical stores or online stores? If online, what are the online channels that they can get access to?
Yeah, Nicole wants to say. Or Marna?
I think now let me read the question again.
No, I think like one online channel is the Ukyoto website where they can get ebooks. And I think also somebody mentioned, I don't remember who did, we did turn to online shopping, and that included bookstores. Like we have this online platform called Shopee, and I saw there that Fully Booked, that's another bookstore in the Philippines, are selling their books through there. So yeah, during the pandemic, I think a lot of bookstores also resorted to online, not traveling, online shopping, so you can get your books. Since like what we've said already, a lot of people also turned to reading during the pandemic.
Yes.
So
that is for paperbacks. For paperback copies, those are the stores available. They have online stores. They have the online platforms or the online selling platforms. For ebooks, we have Amazon, Google Play, Kindle. I think our paperbacks are also available via Amazon. And if some of our Filipino viewers would ask how long would it take for Amazon to deliver, more or less 2 weeks, you can get your paperback copy of any book that you find in that store.
Yeah,
Okay.
and maybe added to that, because not just in the bookstores. I think all businesses have already shifted from the
Yeah.
brick and mortar and into digital. So that goes as well with the bookstores, like National Bookstore. Like before, they would be like relying on the you have to go to the store to buy books, but now they are shifting into free deliveries even, and the appearances and existence of like a lot of online stores, online books, flip books, and all that. It's like what we've been discussing. Like everyone is adapting to what is happening around us. So even the businesses, the people,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah. So actually, we have another interesting question that I feel like everyone will be able to answer well. If I wish to get into the literary domain and enhance my career in the same being in Philippines, like writing books, being a full-time author, etc., where do you suggest I apply or how to go about it in terms of joining an institution or something and then go for publishing? So, what was your process like for everyone? Any advice for budding authors?
Oh,
okay.
it's
Huh?
okay. Go.
Okay,
Go on. It's okay.
we're like waiting, like who was going to say first. Okay, well, this is a platform, like the one that hosting us is the UK Audio Publishing, and even before being a published author, that's actually our questions,
Mhm.
because we normally like write blogs and all that and kept it to ourselves, but
Mhm.
we need to like we do self publishing, and Kyoto actually, like I'd like to flex, this publishing house, because they are for a first time author like me, like I mean like all of us, it's
Mhm.
actually daunting and pretty much hard to start, like, and it's always been a dream to publish a book, but it's hard to find a publisher that can guide you all throughout the process. And it's pretty hard to for yourself to ask like how do you do this, but they have been very very supportive, and it's actually easy to talk to them about things that sometimes you feel like, am I gonna ask this, or they may think that I'm not good enough, or what, all the overthinking and all that. But this Kyoto Publishing House really is like a hands-on publisher for us. I
Mhm.
mean, for our experience, I think other authors can add to that
Yeah.
Mhm.
as well.
Agree. Yes,
I'm gonna
Martin.
go.
I agree completely. I mean, I just add one sentence to that. Ukyoto, I think, is the ideal name to take. And I'm not saying this because there's a an Ukyoto organized event at all. Even if I'm speaking about it anywhere, and I think all my friends in India and abroad, they're aware of this. I say this all the time, that if you need a publisher which is a new age one, which is dynamic, which is responsive, it's going to like take your question properly as a worthwhile question, that you have a query, you are anxious about something and you want to know, and the publisher simply thinks you are very foolish and there's no point in answering this. That's not what our publisher is. Very professional, at the same time responsive, responsible, keeping to all their commitments. Till now it's been over a year that Kyoto and I have been together. So it's been, there is really nothing more that I can say to appreciate the kind of publishing company that Kyoto is. Honestly, I say that to everybody, like Kyoto could be, asking anyone I know. So that's there. Yes, Marla, I interrupted, please.
No, it's okay. No, I was gonna say the same thing. Like, I'm not saying this because they picked up my book and they published it, but I think one of the things that I like about Ukyoto is their lead time in publishing. So of course, before I was looking for publishers as well. I'm looking. Some of the lead time is like 8 weeks, which is so long. But
Mhm.
then Ukyoto could do that in like a month. And during that month, they're so hands-on. They will contact you, tell you everything that's going on with your book, every step of the way they update you. So I think like having someone like that or a publisher like that is really good, especially for new authors, because they usually don't know what to do. So having Ukyoto tell you what's going to happen next is a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I agree. Being someone who's still in college and is not aware of all the adulting parts of life, um, Ukiyoto really helped by being really hands-on and very responsive. Like I'm honestly shocked at how responsive they are and how much they actually I how much they actually help out the author. Um, just going slightly back to the question about publishing a book. I just want to share this advice that my teacher gave me, my writing teacher. My writing teacher gave me, always submit no matter what. You never know what's going to happen. You submit and you don't lose anything. But if you don't submit, you lose the chance of actually being nominated, being published. So I just want to share that piece of wisdom that I got from my teacher. Always submit no matter what. There. That's all.
In relation to that, always submit no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Ukyoto had a lot of programs back in 2020. I think there are still a lot of programs, upcoming programs this year. But what happened to me was that they had this blogger to book, blogger to author program wherein, as Leah said, I just submitted some parts of my blog, and then the rest is history. So I think, to answer the question about going full time, it depends. If you can sustain yourself, why not? Then go full time and publish as much books as you want. But if you are still un- kind of struggling, I suggest do not let go of your day job. Just continue with your day job and continue with your dream of becoming an author. Look at a lot of There are a lot of interesting options, a lot of interesting programs. Just take a look at what speaks a lot to you, be it in drama or poetry. I think there's one pending for poetry, um, and other stories. Even thesis writing is, I think Ukyoto has a program for that. So just submit and let the publishing do the rest.
Yeah.
Okay, well, adding on to that, another question, which is again, I think something that you all will be able to answer really well, is do you suggest any writing course? Because this person wishes to publish in Filipino, but wishes to groom their writing skills first. So, what are your thoughts about that?
As to writing courses,
Mm-hmm.
if there is a platform called edX, wherein a lot of schools post programs there. So maybe you can find one for writing. I've been studying through edX for quite a while, although not writing related, but they do have a lot of programs for that. You might want to check it out.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. I'm so sorry. I don't remember like the website, but I know there was this website that offered like a free course, creative writing course for a month. So maybe they could just easily look it up online.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's also a start. But yeah, that's what I could say.
Personally, I did not had any formal writing course, and
Yeah, me too.
I can't remember any website to share with you. But I think this might help. I think even without the formal writing course, I think you just have to start writing.
Mm-hmm.
Start it with whatever thoughts on your mind, and then the grammar thing and all the formal things will just you know go after that. So for now, while you're just searching for whatever writing course it is or whatever school you want to go in, for now you just write whatever it is, regardless if it's like correct grammar, grammatically correct or whatnot. Just write about it and then check it afterwards or later if you already had a formal education for that.
I agree with Nicole. Personally, I haven't. Most of my writing classes came from school. But I agree that if you want to write, you will write. Don't mind first all those things that correct grammar and all that. If you want to write something, just write it down all at once, and then after that take a breather, and then look at it from a perspective of clear proofreading, of proofreading perspective. But first off, just write whatever you're feeling, just write it all down before before things fall off your head. Because if you think about it, when you write, you're preserving moments in life, and those moments are not to be cheesy again, but moments are fleeting. So you do your best to write everything about that moment right away. Don't think first of all the grammars and all that. Just preserve that moment right away. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think this will be the final question for the session today. Is poetry more accepted or prose in Philippines? And also, what do you think authors generally tend to write more? Poetry, prose, long novels, novella?
For me, I think it really depends on the person, because not everyone, people may be similar, but everyone is different. It's again not to be cheesy, but uniquely different. So to answer that question about if authors tend to write poetry or prose or long novels and whatnot, it depends really on the writer. And it's possible that the writer can do all three or can just do one or two. But it just depends on the writer. There's no, I don't think there's a set answer to that, because people surprise you, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for me.
Yeah, for me actually, well, I write kind of poetry, prose, and novels. So, but like Leah said, it's different for everyone. I think what's important here is finding what you like to write about. It doesn't matter if it's a poetry or if it's a prose, it's a novel or collection of short stories. What's important is what you feel like writing, because what you write is who you are, and that's what you need to do. I think what's important here to be.
I agree with the writer's perspective, but from a reader's perspective, I think it's the same. It depends on your individuality. If you want some poetry or if you prefer prose or novels, it's up to you. You don't have to go with the flow. Like, oh look, everyone's buying this book of poetry or poems. You don't have to buy it if you don't want to. Just buy what you like and read what you like. It's up to you. I think Nicole has something to say.
Yeah, and sometimes we just like put on like a note, like a short like tweet something, and then later on it develops into a poem or even into a prose. Or sometimes it's just we're writing about our feelings for the day, and then when you go back to it tomorrow, you'll never know it's gonna be like a short story. So just go back to the just write about it, and then it all will fall into place. That's what I think personally.
What Nicole is referring to, I think, has had quite a resurgence during this entire pandemic. Particularly, this is something that many authors have been doing as journaling, like like kind of keep a diary, like write down things and then see what it develops into. Very, very true. Yes, she's there to steer us, for the rest of it.
Okay, so I think this was a very wonderful and engaging session, and I completely agree with everyone. The art is art. All forms of art are definitely evolving, and I feel like it's not just the creatives but also the non-creatives who are taking an interest and even engaging with different art forms. Like, I had a friend who has never really done anything creative, but he was making bookmarks the other day just because he had the time after so long. So I feel like this is something that everyone brought up in the session that I feel was very true, and I think everyone in the world can agree to that. So on that note, I would insightful thoughts on this session, and also Shruti, Dora, for connecting the conversation between everyone with such an easy flow and with thought-provoking insights. So thank you, our panelists and our moderator, but also thank you for everyone who is watching it with us. So before we say our final goodbye, there's an announcement that I would like to make is that Kyoto is having their first on-ground event after a really long time because obviously pandemic on the 21st of March. It's a book launch followed by a networking session, a book display, a showcase at the launch. So the event will be held in the Taj Vivanta in Kolkata, India. And we would like to encourage all the authors who have been published by Kyoto to participate in person if you live in the city or on remote mode to launch your books, engage with your audience, and also like speak about your stories while you have your photos and books on display for everyone to see. So you can log on to www.ukyoto.com/upcoming-projects to book your slots for that. Thank you everyone so much for joining and a happy lunar year. Do you all want to end this with a closing note? Anyone?
Our panelists must be hungry for lunch now.
Just happy Valentine's Day to everyone who's celebrating and not celebrating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And happy Sunday for the rest.
And just as Isvi was saying, just to repeat the two, once for particularly for our friends in India, there is this very big event coming up at Taj Vivanta in Calcutta, in the city of Calcutta, officially now Kolkata, of course. So there is a bit of a booking of a slot that's involved. Many of us will be there. Our friends from all over the world, our friend authors from all over the world can be there remotely if they wish to join. I'll be there in person. That's a secret. So if you want to come, if you want to be there, please do come. That's a Sunday, 21st March. So hope to see you.
Yes, and please check Kyoto social media platforms for the booking links. So you'll find it all there, all the information on there. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I'm so glad we were able to do this. So just gonna end it now. Okay.
Thank
you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Happy Valentine's.
Happy Valentine's Day.
you. Bye-bye.